The smell hit me first. That sickeningly sweet perfume Marlene never wore for me anymore, mixed with something else. Guilt, maybe, or just another man's cologne. I'm Evan Colehart, 30 years old, high school science teacher, and apparently the biggest fool in northern Maine. My wife thinks I don't notice her late showings at the real estate office, but I've got a PhD in observation and a master's degree in being underestimated. "Hey, honey," Marlene called from the kitchen, her voice artificially bright. "How was your day with the little monsters?" I looked up from grading papers at our kitchen table. She stood there in her power suit, lipstick smudged, hair just a little too perfect for someone who'd been showing houses all evening. The digital clock on the microwave read 11:47 p.m. Hell of a long showing. "Oh, you know how it is," I said, keeping my voice level. "Teaching kids about chemical reactions, cause and effect, basic science." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Speaking of science, I still think you're faking that whole peanut allergy thing. I mean, come on, Evan, you're 30 years old. Who develops a life-threatening allergy as an adult?" "People who nearly passed from anaphylactic shock tend to take it seriously," I replied, watching her face carefully. "But hey, what do I know? I'm just a science teacher." Marlene rolled her eyes and headed upstairs. "I'm exhausted. Don't stay up too late with your little experiments." Little experiments. Right. The next morning, I woke to the smell of pancakes, Marlene's specialty, though she hadn't made them in months. She stood at the stove humming, looking almost guilty in her eagerness to please. "Surprise," she announced, sliding a plate in front of me. "Your favorite, blueberry pancakes with that maple syrup you love." I studied the pancakes. They looked normal, smelled normal, but something felt off. Marlene watched me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "Thanks," I said, cutting a small piece. "This is unexpected." "Can't a wife make breakfast for her husband?" She sat across from me, chin propped on her hands, staring. I took a bite. The pancake tasted fine, maybe a little grittier than usual. I swallowed and took another bite, then another. Marlene's smile grew wider with each bite. That's when I felt it. The familiar tingle in my throat, the slight swelling of my tongue. My pulse quickened. "Marlene," I said carefully, "what did you put in these pancakes?" Her smile faltered for just a second. "Nothing special, just the usual ingredients." The tingling intensified. My throat began to tighten. I stood up quickly, knocking over my chair. "What did you put in them?" I demanded, my voice already getting hoarse. "Oh my God," she said, but she was smiling, actually smiling. "I just wanted to see if you were really allergic or if you were faking it for attention. I only used a tiny bit of peanut flour, like barely any." My vision started to blur around the edges. I stumbled to the counter where I kept my EpiPen, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip it. Behind me, I heard Marlene laugh. "I can't believe you're actually—" "Oh shit! Evan? Evan!" I managed to inject the epinephrine into my thigh just as my legs gave out. Through the haze of anaphylaxis, I watched my wife of 3 years panic as she realized she might have just hurted me. "Call 911, I wheezed. "I'm calling. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I thought you were faking it." The paramedics arrived in what felt like hours, but was probably minutes. As they loaded me onto a stretcher, I heard Marlene talking to a police officer. "It was just a joke," she kept saying. "I didn't think he was really allergic. Who gets allergic to peanuts as an adult?" The officer's response was lost in the sound of the ambulance doors slamming shut. At the hospital, while the doctors pumped me full of steroids and antihistamines, I had plenty of time to think. My wife had tried to hurt me, maybe not intentionally, but she deliberately exposed me to something she knew I claimed was life-threatening, just to prove I was lying. The trust was gone, completely, utterly gone. But what really sealed it was what I overheard when she thought I was sleeping. Marlene was on her phone in the hallway outside my room. "Don't worry, Kyle. He bought it, he always does. I told him it was just a joke gone wrong, and he's so pathetic he'll probably apologize to me. Kyle. So now I had a name. No, he won't leave me. He's too weak. Besides, where would he go? I make twice what he does. Yeah, I know. Just give me a few more weeks to figure out the divorce angle. I want to make sure I get the house. I closed my eyes and smiled. My dear wife had no idea what she'd just unleashed. You see, there's something people don't understand about science teachers. We're not just good at experiments. We're excellent at patience, observation, and planning. We understand cause and effect better than anyone, and we really, really hate being underestimated. I spent 2 days in the hospital, giving my body time to recover and my mind time to plan. Marlene visited twice, bringing flowers and apologies, playing the role of the guilty but loving wife. She was good at it, I had to admit. If I hadn't heard that phone call, I might have believed her. "I'm so sorry, honey," she said, squeezing my hand. "I never should have doubted you. It's just that it seemed so convenient, you know? Getting allergic right after we got married." Right after we got married. Interesting choice of words. "It's okay," I lied. "I understand why you might have been skeptical." Relief flooded her face. "Really? You're not mad?" "I'm hurt," I said truthfully. "But I'm not mad." She kissed my forehead. "I have to get back to work. Lila's covering my appointments, but I can't leave her hanging too long." Lila. Marlene's best friend and fellow real estate agent. If anyone knew about Kyle, it would be her. After Marlene left, I called Principal Hanks to let him know I'd need a few more days off. Jim Hanks had been my boss for 5 years, and he was one of the few people who actually respected my work. "Jesus, Evan. Your wife poisoned you?" "Accidentally," I said. "She thought I was faking the allergy." "That's..." He paused. "That's pretty messed up, man. You sure you're okay?" "I'll be fine. Just need to rest up. Take all the time you need. And Evan, if you need anything, call me." That afternoon, I had an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Brody from next door knocked on my hospital room door, carrying a plate of cookies. "Evan, dear, I heard what happened. Are you all right?" Eleanor Brody was 73 years old and knew everything that happened in our neighborhood. She was also one of the few people who genuinely seemed to like me. "I'm recovering, Mrs. Brody. Thank you for coming." She settled into the visitor's chair with a sigh. I have to say I'm not entirely surprised. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Brody glanced around the room, then leaned forward conspiratorially. "Well, I probably shouldn't say anything, but that red BMW has been parked in your driveway an awful lot when you're at work." My heart started beating faster. "Red BMW?" "Flashy thing. Belongs to that man from Marlene's office. Kyle something or other. He's there most Tuesday and Thursday afternoons." She patted my hand. "I didn't want to be the bearer of bad news, dear, but after what she did to you..." "Thank you, Mrs. Brody. I appreciate you telling me." She nodded grimly. "That girl's got champagne tastes and a beer budget, if you ask me. Always has." After she left, I stared at the ceiling and processed this information. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Those were the days Marlene said she had her biggest client meetings. The days she always came home late, claiming she'd had to show multiple properties. The pieces were falling into place. I was discharged the next morning with a prescription for prednisone and strict instructions to avoid all nuts. Marlene picked me up, chattering nervously about work, and how sorry she was, and how she'd thrown out everything in the house that might contain peanuts. "I even went through all the labels," she said as we drove home. "Did you know peanut oil is in, like, everything?" "I know," I said quietly. "I've been reading labels for 2 years." She had the grace to look ashamed. At home, I settled into my recliner with a cup of tea, while Marlene fussed around me, adjusting pillows and offering snacks. It was almost touching, if you didn't know she was planning to divorce me and take half my assets. "I have to go to work for a few hours," she said eventually. Will you be okay? I'll be fine. Go ahead. She kissed my cheek and left. I waited until her car was out of sight, then got to work. First, I went through her home office. Marlene was organized to a fault, so it didn't take long to find what I was looking for. In her desk drawer, underneath a stack of client files, I found a folder labeled Personal. Inside were printouts of our bank statements, mortgage information, and a handwritten list of our assets with estimated values. At the bottom of the list, in Marlene's neat handwriting, total estimated value, $340,000, ME divorce, chuck 50% minimum. Maine was indeed a no-fault divorce state where assets were split equitably. She'd done her homework. But that wasn't the most interesting thing in the folder. Tucked behind the asset list was a business card. Kyle Dempsey, Senior Sales Associate, Coastal Maine Realty. On the back, in the same handwriting, dinner Friday, 7 p.m., Portland Harbor Hotel. That was last Friday. The night Marlene said she had to work late on a big commercial deal. I photographed everything with my phone, then carefully put the folder back exactly as I'd found it. Next, I checked our computer. Marlene had always been careless about logging out of her accounts, and today was no exception. Her email was still open, and I scrolled through the last few weeks of messages. Most were work-related, but there were several from an account I didn't recognize, kdempsey.coastalagmail.com. The emails were carefully worded, but the subtext was clear. Looking forward to our appointment Tuesday. I have some properties I'd love to show you privately. Thanks for the personal tour yesterday. Your expertise in bedroom layouts is impressive. Can't wait to see you again Thursday. I have something special in mind. I screenshot everything, then cleared the browser history of my visit. By the time Marlene came home that evening, I had enough evidence to confront her. But I wasn't ready for that yet. I needed to know more about Kyle Dempsey first. How are you feeling? She asked, settling next to me on the couch. Better. The swelling's gone down. Good. She curled up against me, and for a moment, I almost forgot she was planning to leave me. I was thinking we should plan a vacation, maybe go somewhere warm. We haven't had a real trip in ages. That sounds nice, I said, wondering if she was planning to serve me divorce papers on a beach somewhere. That night, after Marlene fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My wife was cheating on me with her coworker, planning to divorce me, and had nearly herded me to test whether my medical condition was real. Most people would call a lawyer. Some would confront her immediately. A few might even consider violence. But I'm a scientist. I believe in methodical approaches, careful planning, and making sure your hypothesis is absolutely correct before you proceed to the conclusion. I was going to destroy both of them, but I was going to do it right. Tuesday afternoon, I called in sick to school and positioned myself in the parking lot of a coffee shop with a clear view of my house. At 2:15 p.m., right on schedule, a cherry-red BMW pulled into my driveway. Kyle Dempsey was exactly what I'd expected. Tall, athletic, expensive suit, perfect hair. He looked like he'd stepped out of a real estate magazine, all white teeth and confident swagger. The kind of man who'd never been told no, never been underestimated, never had to work for anything in his life. He knocked on my front door like he owned the place. Marlene answered wearing a silk robe I'd bought her for our anniversary. She'd never worn it for me. They disappeared inside, and I drove home. I parked 2 blocks away and approached through Mrs. Brody's backyard. She was working in her garden and waved when she saw me. Feeling better, dear? Much, thank you. I'm just grabbing some papers I forgot. She nodded knowingly. That red car's here again. I noticed. I slipped through my back door as quietly as possible. The house wasn't large, and sound carried. I could hear them upstairs in what used to be our bedroom, and the sounds left no doubt about what they were doing. But I wasn't there for evidence of the affair. I already had that. I was there for Kyle's wallet. He'd left his jacket draped over a kitchen chair, and his wallet was in the inside pocket. I photographed his driver's license, credit cards, and business cards, then carefully returned everything exactly as I'd found it. Kyle Dempsey, age 34, lived at 47 Harbor View condos in downtown Portland. According to his credit cards, he had accounts with 3 different banks and a Platinum American Express. His business card listed him as Senior Sales Associate and $1 million producer. I also found something interesting tucked behind his license, a prescription bottle. Viagra. Apparently, Mr. Perfect needed a little help performing. I was back outside within 5 minutes, walking casually to my car like I'd just stopped by to pick up some papers. Mrs. Brody was still in her garden. "Find what you needed?" she called. "Exactly what I was looking for," I replied. That evening, I did some research on Kyle Dempsey. Social media made it easy. His Facebook page was public, full of photos of him with expensive cars, at fancy restaurants, on boats. He clearly made good money, or at least wanted people to think he did. His LinkedIn profile was even more revealing. He'd been with Coastal Maine Realty for 2 years, after being downsized from a firm in Boston. Before that, he'd worked at 3 other real estate companies over 5 years. Either he was very ambitious or very bad at keeping jobs. But the most interesting thing was a photo from last month's company party. Kyle had his arm around Marlene, both of them laughing at something off camera. They looked comfortable together, familiar. This wasn't a new relationship. I was studying the photo when Marlene came home, earlier than usual and looking flustered. "Hey," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "How was your day?" "Quiet. I mostly slept." "Good. You need the rest." She headed straight for the shower, which wasn't unusual after her appointments with Kyle. Over dinner, she seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work stuff. Kyle's having some issues with a client." Kyle. She'd used his name. Either she was getting careless or she wanted me to know. "Kyle Dempsey?" I asked casually. "I think I met him at your company party last year." "Yeah, that's him. He's having trouble closing a deal." "What kind of trouble?" She looked uncomfortable. "The client's being difficult. Questioning everything, demanding proof of things that should be obvious." "Sounds frustrating," I said. "Maybe Kyle should try a different approach. Sometimes when you're dealing with someone who asks a lot of questions, it's better to have all your facts straight before you make your move." Marlene stared at me for a long moment. "What do you mean?" "Just that some people don't like being underestimated. They might seem passive, but they're actually paying attention to everything." "Evan, are you feeling okay? You're talking kind of strange." I smiled. "Must be the medication. It makes me feel different, more focused." That night, she stayed up late texting someone. I pretended to be asleep, but I could see the glow of her phone screen and hear the soft tapping of her fingers on the keyboard. The next morning, I made a decision. It was time to meet Kyle Dempsey face to face. I drove to Coastal Maine Realty during my lunch break. The office was exactly what I'd expected, all glass and chrome with photos of expensive properties covering the walls. A receptionist with perfect makeup and a fake smile greeted me. "Can I help you?" "I'd like to speak with Kyle Dempsey about listing my house." "Of course. Let me see if he's available." She made a quick phone call, then led me to a corner office with Kyle's name on the door. He was sitting behind a massive desk, looking every bit the successful salesman. "Mr. Colehart? Evan Colehart." I watched his face carefully. There was a flicker of recognition, quickly suppressed. "Please have a seat. I understand you're interested in selling your home?" "That's right. My wife and I are thinking about making some changes." "Excellent. What's your address?" I gave him my address and watched him write it down, though I was certain he already knew it by heart. "Beautiful neighborhood," he said. "I'm familiar with the area. What's prompting the sale?" "Oh, you know how it is. Sometimes relationships change. People grow apart. You realize the person you married isn't who you thought they were. Kyle shifted uncomfortably. I see. Well, the market's very strong right now. I'm confident we can get you top dollar. I'm sure you can. My wife speaks very highly of your expertise. Your wife? Marlene Vicks. She works here too. The color drained from his face. Marlene is your wife? For now, I said pleasantly. Though I get the feeling that might be changing soon. Kyle stood up abruptly. Mr. Colehart, I think there might be some confusion. Oh, there's no confusion, I interrupted, standing as well. I know exactly what's going on. The question is, what are you going to do about it? He stared at me for a long moment, clearly trying to figure out how much I knew and what I planned to do with the information. Look, he said finally, whatever you think you know. I know my wife tried to hurt me last week to test whether my peanut allergy was real. I know she's been planning our divorce for months, and I know she's been sleeping with you in my bed every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon. Kyle's mouth fell open. But here's what you don't know, I continued, stepping closer to his desk. You don't know that I'm not the weak, pathetic man you both think I am. You don't know that I've been documenting everything. And you don't know what I'm capable of when someone tries to destroy my life. I leaned forward, placing my hands on his desk. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to end this thing with my wife. You're going to transfer to another office, or better yet, another company, and you're going to disappear from our lives. Or what? Kyle asked, trying to sound tough but failing. I smiled. Or I'm going to show you exactly what a science teacher can do when he puts his mind to it. I left him sitting there, pale and shaken, and drove back to school feeling better than I had in weeks. The war had officially begun. Kyle didn't take my advice. Thursday afternoon, the red BMW was back in my driveway. This time, I didn't just watch. I took action. I'd spent Wednesday evening in my basement workshop, preparing what I like to call science demonstrations. Nothing illegal, nothing dangerous, just some creative chemistry that would make a point. While Kyle and Marlene were busy upstairs, I got to work on his car. The first demonstration was simple, a mixture of corn syrup, food coloring, and a harmless but foul-smelling compound I'd synthesized from sulfur and organic acids. I poured it carefully over his windshield, where it would harden into a sticky, smelly mess that would take hours to remove. The second demonstration was more sophisticated. I attached a small device I'd built to his exhaust pipe, nothing that would damage the engine, but it would create thick, colored smoke the next time he started the car. The third demonstration was my favorite. I'd created a batch of what I called glitter glue, a mixture that would stick to anything it touched and leave a trail of bright, sparkly residue that was nearly impossible to remove. I applied it liberally to his door handles. Then I waited. 20 minutes later, I heard shouting from the driveway. Through my kitchen window, I watched Kyle discover my handiwork. His hands were covered in glittery purple goo, his windshield was coated with green slime, and when he started his car, clouds of pink smoke poured from the exhaust. Marlene came running out in her robe, took one look at the mess, and started screaming at Kyle like it was his fault. "What did you do?" she shrieked. "I didn't do anything. Someone did this to my car." "Who would do something like this?" Kyle looked directly at the kitchen window where I was standing, and our eyes met. I raised my coffee mug in a mock toast. "I think I know," he said grimly. I watched them argue for another 5 minutes before Kyle drove away, leaving a trail of pink smoke and glitter. Marlene stormed back into the house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. "Evan!" she yelled. I took my time walking to the living room. "Yes, dear? Did you do something to Kyle's car?" "Kyle's car? Why would I do anything to Kyle's car? I barely know the man." "Don't lie to me. Someone vandalized his BMW, and it had to be you." "That's a serious accusation, Marlene. Do you have any proof?" She stared at me, fury radiating from every pore. "I know it was you." Prove it. We stood there glaring at each other for a long moment. Finally, she turned and stomped upstairs. I heard her on the phone a few minutes later, presumably with Kyle, but I couldn't make out the words. That evening, she was unusually quiet during dinner. She kept shooting suspicious glances at me, like she was seeing me for the first time. "Evan," she said finally, "what's gotten into you lately?" "What do you mean?" "You're acting different. Ever since the hospital." "Dangerous experiences can be enlightening," I said. "They make you realize what's really important in life, and what isn't." "What's that supposed to mean?" I set down my fork and looked directly at her. "It means I'm tired of being taken for granted. I'm tired of being treated like I'm stupid, and I'm tired of pretending I don't know what's going on." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" We stared at each other across the dinner table, and I could see the exact moment she realized the game had changed. Her husband wasn't the same passive, trusting man she'd married. Something had shifted, and she didn't know how to handle it. "I'm going to stay at Lila's tonight," she said finally. "I need some space to think." "Good idea. Give my regards to Kyle." She flinched like I'd slapped her. After she left, I called Principal Hanks. "Jim, it's Evan. I need a favor." "What's up?" "I need to borrow the school's chemistry lab this weekend. I'm working on a special project." "Sure, no problem. Everything okay at home?" "Getting better every day." Friday morning, I went to school early and spent 2 hours in the chemistry lab, preparing for Phase 2 of my campaign. I created several new compounds, including a batch of what I called stink powder, a mixture that would produce an incredibly foul smell when exposed to heat or friction. I also prepared something I'd been wanting to try for years, a chemical compound that would react with certain metals to produce a bright, persistent color change. It was completely harmless, but virtually impossible to remove once it bonded with the metal. Friday evening, I drove to Kyle's condo building. Harborview Condos was exactly the kind of pretentious place I'd expected, all glass and steel, with a doorman and valet parking. Kyle's BMW was in the parking garage, still showing traces of purple glitter, despite what must have been professional cleaning. I waited until the garage was empty, then got to work. First, I applied the stink powder to his air vents. The next time he turned on his air conditioning or heat, the car would be filled with a smell like rotting eggs mixed with rotten fish. Next, I used my metal reactive compound on his door handles, license plate, and BMW logo. Within hours, they would turn a bright, permanent orange color. Finally, I left a note under his windshipper. "This is just the beginning. End it now or things get much worse." I was back home by 9 o'clock, feeling satisfied with a job well done. Saturday morning, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but I answered anyway. "You snake!" Kyle's voice was shaking with rage. "What did you do to my car?" "I'm sorry, who is this?" "You know damn well who this is. My car smells like a sewer and all the metal parts are bright orange." "That sounds terrible. Have you considered taking it to a professional detailer?" "This isn't over, you pathetic little man. I'm going to make you pay for this." "Is that a threat, Kyle?" "It's a promise." "Interesting. Because threatening someone is actually a crime. Vandalizing someone's car, on the other hand, is just property damage, and you'd have to prove who did it." The line went quiet for a moment. "I know it was you," he said finally. "Prove it." I hung up and immediately called the police non-emergency line. "I'd like to report a threatening phone call," I told the dispatcher, giving them Kyle's number and a detailed account of his threats. 20 minutes later, a police officer called me back. "Mr. Colehart, we spoke with Mr. Dempsey about the phone call. He admits to calling you but denies making any threats. He says his car was vandalized and he was upset." "I understand. I just wanted it on record in case anything else happens." "Good thinking. If he contacts you again, let us know immediately." Perfect. Now Kyle was on the police radar, and any future escalation would look like it was coming from him. That afternoon, Marlene came home looking haggard and stressed. "We need to talk," she said. "About what?" "About whatever game you're playing. Kyle's car has been vandalized twice this week and he thinks you're responsible." "Kyle thinks a lot of things. Doesn't make them true." "Evan, please, just tell me what you want." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd once loved, who had tried to poison me and was planning to divorce me while sleeping with another man. "I want honesty," I said finally. "I want respect. And I want you to stop treating me like I'm stupid." "I don't treat you like you're stupid." "Don't you? You tried to hurt me to prove I was faking a medical condition. You've been cheating on me for months and planning our divorce while pretending to be a loving wife. And you think I'm too pathetic to figure it out." Her face went white. "Evan, I know about Kyle. I know about the divorce planning. I know about everything." She sank into a chair, all the fight going out of her. "How long have you known?" she whispered. "Long enough." "What are you going to do?" I smiled. "I'm going to show you both what happens when you underestimate a science teacher." The real fun was just beginning. Monday morning brought an unexpected development. I was in my classroom, setting up for first period, when Principal Hanks knocked on my door. "Evan, there's someone here to see you, says it's urgent." I followed him to the main office where Kyle Dempsey was waiting, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Mr. Colehart," he said, standing when he saw me. "We need to talk." "I'm sorry, but I'm about to teach a class. If you'd like to schedule an appointment." "This can't wait." He looked around the office, aware that the secretaries were listening. "It's about the property damage to my vehicle." Principal Hanks frowned. "Property damage?" "It's nothing, Jim," I said calmly. "Mr. Dempsey seems to think I'm responsible for some vandalism, but he has no proof." "Because you're too smart to leave proof," Kyle snapped. "But I know it was you, and I know why." "Mr. Dempsey," Principal Hanks said firmly, "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. If you have a legal issue with one of my teachers, you need to handle it through proper channels." "This isn't over," Kyle said, pointing at me. "Actually," I replied, "I think it is. You see, Kyle, you made a fundamental error. You assumed I was weak because I'm quiet. You assumed I was stupid because I teach high school. And you assumed I'd just roll over and let you destroy my life." "You don't know who you're messing with," he said. "Neither do you." Security escorted Kyle from the building, but not before half the office staff had witnessed his meltdown. By lunchtime, word had spread throughout the school that someone was harassing Mr. Colehart, and by the end of the day, I had a dozen offers of support from colleagues who'd never paid much attention to me before. It's amazing how people's perception of you changes when they see you standing up for yourself. That evening, I decided it was time for Phase 3. I'd been doing research on Kyle's professional life, and I'd discovered some interesting things. His sales record, while impressive on paper, showed some unusual patterns. Several of his biggest deals had fallen through at the last minute, and there were gaps in his employment history that didn't match his LinkedIn profile. More importantly, I'd found his social media accounts, including some he probably thought were private. Kyle Dempsey liked to brag about his lifestyle, posting photos of expensive dinners, luxury vacations, and high-end purchases. The problem was, his documented income didn't match his spending. Either he was independently wealthy, which seemed unlikely given his employment history, or he was living beyond his means and possibly engaging in some creative financing. I decided to find out which. Wednesday evening, while Marlene was at what she claimed was a girls' night out with Lila, I drove to Kyle's condo building. I'd done some reconnaissance and learned that he lived on the 15th floor, with a balcony overlooking the harbor. I also learned that the building's security was more impressive looking than effective. I didn't break into his apartment. That would have been illegal and unnecessary. Instead, I positioned myself in the parking garage with a clear view of his assigned space and waited. At 11:30 p.m., Kyle's orange-stained BMW pulled into the garage. He got out, looking around nervously, and headed for the elevator. But he wasn't alone. Marlene was with him. They were laughing about something, completely relaxed and comfortable with each other. Marlene was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, something expensive and elegant that she definitely couldn't afford on her real estate assistant's salary. I followed them at a distance, taking the stairs while they took the elevator. By the time I reached the 15th floor, they were already inside Kyle's apartment. But the walls in the hallway were thin, and I could hear their conversation clearly. "Did you see his face when I showed up at his school?" Kyle was saying. "He looked like he was going to wet himself." "I still can't believe he's been vandalizing your car," Marlene replied. "I never thought Evan had it in him. He's pathetic, but he's starting to piss me off." "What are you going to do about it?" "I'm thinking about paying him a visit. Show him what happens when you mess with the wrong person." "Kyle, no. That's exactly what he wants. He's trying to provoke you into doing something stupid." "So what do you suggest?" "We stick to the plan. I file for divorce next month, we get married as soon as it's final, and Evan becomes a bad memory." "And what if he tries to fight the divorce? What if he's been recording us or something?" "Then we deal with it. I've been married to him for 3 years, Kyle. I know how his mind works. He's not as smart as he thinks he is." I smiled in the darkness of the hallway. They had no idea how wrong they were. I made my way back to the parking garage and spent a few minutes examining Kyle's BMW more closely. The orange staining on the metal parts had become even more pronounced, and the smell from the stink powder was still noticeable, even with the windows closed. But what interested me most was what I found in his glove compartment. The car was unlocked. Apparently, Kyle had given up on security after the repeated vandalism, and I quickly searched through the papers inside. Most were routine: registration, insurance, service records, but tucked behind the owner's manual was something much more interesting: a loan document from a private lending company showing that Kyle owed $47,000 at an interest rate of 18% annually. The monthly payments were $1,200, and according to the payment history, he was 3 months behind. Kyle Dempsey, successful real estate agent and million-dollar producer, was broke. I photographed the document and left everything exactly as I'd found it. As I drove home, I began formulating the next phase of my plan. Thursday morning, I called Coastal Maine Realty and asked to speak with the office manager. "This is Janet Morrison. How can I help you?" "Ms. Morrison, my name is Evan Colehart. I'm calling about Kyle Dempsey." "Are you a client of Kyle's?" "Not exactly. I'm calling to report some concerns about his professional conduct." There was a pause. "What kind of concerns?" "I have reason to believe Mr. Dempsey is engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a married colleague, and that this relationship may be affecting his professional judgment." "That's a very serious accusation, Mr. Colehart. Do you have any evidence?" "I have photographs, emails, and documented evidence of their affair. I also have concerns about Mr. Dempsey's financial stability and whether it might be affecting his ability to serve clients effectively." Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Colehart, I think you should come in and speak with me in person. Would tomorrow morning work for you?" "That would be perfect." Friday morning, I arrived at Coastal Maine Realty with a folder full of evidence. Janet Morrison was a professional woman in her 50s, with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd been managing real estate agents for decades. "Mr. Colehart, before we begin, I need to ask, what's your relationship to Kyle Dempsey and Marlene Vicks?" "Marlene is my wife. Kyle is her lover." She winced. "I see. And you want to file a complaint?" "I want to provide you with information that I believe is relevant to their employment here." I laid out everything: the emails, the photographs, the evidence of their affair, Kyle's financial problems, and his increasingly erratic behavior. "This is all very concerning," she said when I finished. But I have to ask, why are you bringing this to me instead of handling it privately? Because Kyle Dempsey threatened me. Because he's been harassing me at my workplace. And because I believe their personal relationship is affecting their professional conduct. She studied the documents for several minutes. Mr. Colehart, I'm going to need to investigate these allegations. That means speaking with both Kyle and Marlene. Are you prepared for the consequences of that? Absolutely. Very well, I'll be in touch. I left the office feeling satisfied. By Monday, both Kyle and Marlene would be facing professional consequences for their actions. But I wasn't done yet, not even close. That afternoon, I made one more stop, the offices of Peterson & Associates, the best divorce attorney in town. Mr. Peterson, I said, shaking hands with the silver-haired lawyer, I need to discuss filing for divorce. Of course. What are the grounds? Adultery and attempted murder. He raised an eyebrow. That's quite a combination. Tell me everything. I did. By the time I left his office, I had retained legal representation and begun the process of filing for divorce on grounds of adultery and cruel and abusive treatment. Under Maine law, that meant Marlene's claim to half our assets was in serious jeopardy. More importantly, I had officially gone on the offensive. The weekend was quiet. Marlene spent most of it at Lila's, claiming she needed space to think. Kyle didn't call or show up, probably trying to figure out his next move. I used the time to prepare for what I knew would be a difficult week. Monday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Evan, it's Janet Morrison. Can you come in this afternoon? I've completed my investigation. Of course. What did you find? I think it's better if we discuss it in person. At 3 p.m., I was back in her office. This time, she looked grim. Mr. Colehart, I've spoken with both Kyle and Marlene about your allegations. And? Kyle has been terminated, effective immediately. His conduct was unprofessional and violated several company policies. What about Marlene? Marlene has been placed on administrative leave pending a full review. The situation is complicated. How so? She hesitated. Kyle made some serious accusations about you. He claims you've been stalking and harassing him, vandalizing his property and threatening his safety. I nodded. He's made those claims before. Has he provided any evidence? No. And frankly, his behavior during our meeting was erratic and concerning. He seemed more interested in attacking you than defending his own actions. What happens now? Now we let the lawyers sort it out. But Mr. Colehart, I have to ask, are you prepared for this to get ugly? I smiled. Ms. Morrison, it's been ugly for months. I'm just finally fighting back. That evening, Marlene came home in a fury. You bastard! She screamed the moment she walked through the door. You got Kyle fired! Kyle got Kyle fired. I just provided some information. You ruined his career. He'll never work in real estate again. That's not my problem. She stared at me with pure hatred. I don't know who you think you are, but this isn't over. You're right, I said calmly. It's not over. It's just getting started. I handed her an envelope. What's this? Divorce papers. You're being served. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope and read the contents. Adultery? She whispered. You're claiming adultery? And cruel and abusive treatment. Turns out, trying to poison your spouse is frowned upon by the courts. She sank into a chair, the papers scattered around her feet. Evan, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can... No, I said firmly. We can't. You made your choice when you decided to cheat on me. You made your choice when you tried to hurt me. And you made your choice when you planned to divorce me and take half of everything I've worked for. I never meant for any of this to happen. Yes, you did. You planned all of it. The only thing you didn't plan for was me fighting back. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. What do you want from me? Nothing, I said. I don't want anything from you anymore. I just want you gone. And if I don't go? I smiled. Then things get much, much worse. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings, depositions, and increasingly desperate attempts by Marlene and Kyle to salvage their situation. Kyle had hired a lawyer and was threatening to sue me for harassment and property damage, but his attorney quickly realized he had no case. Meanwhile, my divorce attorney was methodically building a case that would leave Marlene with almost nothing. The evidence of adultery was overwhelming, and the attempted poisoning incident gave us grounds to argue that she had forfeited any claim to spousal support. But the most satisfying development came from an unexpected source. I was grading papers in my classroom after school when Principal Hanks knocked on my door. "Evan, there's someone here to see you, says he's a private investigator." The man who entered my classroom was tall and lean, with the weathered face of someone who'd spent years asking uncomfortable questions. "Mr. Colehart? I'm Detective Ray Mullins, retired Portland PD. I'm working for a private lending company." "What can I do for you, Detective?" "I understand you've had some dealings with Kyle Dempsey." "You could say that." He smiled grimly. "Mr. Dempsey owes my client a substantial amount of money. He's been making promises about a big commission check that's supposedly coming in, but my client is getting impatient." "I'm not sure how I can help you." "Well, here's the thing. Mr. Dempsey's been telling people that he's about to marry a wealthy woman who owns valuable real estate. He's been using that as collateral for additional loans." I felt a cold smile spread across my face. "Is that so?" "The problem is, Mr. Dempsey was recently fired from his job, and the wealthy woman in question is currently going through a rather messy divorce. My client is concerned that Mr. Dempsey may have been less than honest about his prospects. That would be unfortunate." "Indeed. I don't suppose you'd be willing to provide a statement about the true nature of your wife's financial situation?" "I'd be happy to." 20 minutes later, Detective Mullins left with a detailed statement about our assets, Marlene's income, and the fact that she was likely to receive very little in the divorce settlement. That evening, I was cooking dinner when my phone rang. It was Kyle, and he sounded panicked. "Evan, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Look, I know we've had our differences, but I need your help." "My help? That's interesting." "There are some people looking for me. Serious people. They think I owe them money." "Do you?" "That's not the point. The point is, they think Marlene has money, and they're going to come after her to get to me." "And you want me to do what, exactly?" "Tell them she's broke. Tell them the divorce is going to leave her with nothing." "Why would I do that?" There was a long pause. "Because if you don't, they might hurt her." "Kyle," I said calmly, "you should have thought about that before you started using my wife as collateral for your debts." "You snake. You planned this, didn't you?" "I didn't plan for you to be a lying, cheating fraud who borrows money he can't repay, but I'm certainly not going to save you from the consequences of your own actions. If anything happens to Marlene, it won't be my fault. It'll be yours." I hung up and went back to cooking dinner. The next morning, I was awakened by pounding on my front door. I looked out the window and saw 2 large men in expensive suits standing on my porch. Behind them, parked at the curb, was a black SUV with tinted windows. I opened the door, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Can I help you?" "We're looking for Kyle Dempsey," the larger of the 2 men said. "We understand he's been spending time here." "I'm afraid you're mistaken. Mr. Dempsey isn't welcome in my home." "What about your wife, Marlene Vicks?" "My soon-to-be ex-wife doesn't live here anymore." The man studied me carefully. "You're the teacher." "That's right. We heard you and Dempsey had some problems." "You could say that." He smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Maybe we can help each other out." "I'm listening." "Dempsey owes our employer a lot of money. He's been telling us that your wife has assets that could cover his debt." Mr. Dempsey has been telling a lot of people a lot of things. Most of them aren't true. So she doesn't have money? She's a real estate assistant who's about to lose her job. She's facing a divorce that's going to leave her with almost nothing. And she's been stupid enough to get involved with a man who apparently uses other people's imaginary assets as loan collateral. The man nodded slowly. That's very helpful information, Mr. Colehart. I'm a teacher. I believe in education. Indeed. One more question. Do you know where we might find Mr. Dempsey? I gave them Kyle's address and watched them drive away. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Marlene, crying hysterically. Evan, please, you have to help me. There are men looking for Kyle and they think I have money to pay his debts. Where are you? I'm at Lila's, but I don't think I'm safe here. Kyle borrowed money using me as collateral, and now these people want to collect. That sounds like a problem between you and Kyle. Evan, please. I know I hurt you, but I'm scared. I thought about it for a moment. Despite everything she'd done to me, I didn't want Marlene to get hurt by Kyle's creditors. Go to the police, I said finally. File a report about the harassment. Tell them Kyle used your name without permission to secure loans. Will you come with me? No, but I'll provide a statement about your actual financial situation if it helps. Thank you, she whispered. Marlene? Yes? This is the last time I help you. After this, you're on your own. That afternoon, I met with Detective Mullins again, this time at the police station. I provided a detailed statement about Kyle's lies regarding Marlene's assets, and I also filed a complaint about his attempts to involve me in his financial schemes. This should help resolve the situation, Detective Mullins said. My client isn't interested in harassing innocent parties, they just want their money back. And Kyle? Mr. Dempsey has some difficult choices to make. He can either find a way to repay what he owes, or he can face the consequences of his fraudulent representations. What kind of consequences? The kind that make it very difficult to continue living in this area. 2 days later, I heard through Mrs. Brody that Kyle's condo had been cleaned out overnight. His BMW was found abandoned in the parking lot, still stained orange and reeking of chemicals. Kyle Dempsey had disappeared. The following week, Marlene's attorney contacted mine to discuss a settlement. With Kyle gone and her job in jeopardy, she was no longer in a position to fight the divorce. My client is willing to accept a minimal settlement in exchange for a quick resolution, her lawyer said. How minimal? My attorney asked. She keeps her personal belongings and her car. Everything else goes to your client. What about spousal support? She waives all claims to spousal support. My attorney looked at me. I nodded. We accept. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Marlene moved out of state, supposedly to live with relatives in Florida. I never saw her again. On the last day of school, Principal Hanks stopped by my classroom. Evan, I have to ask, did you really vandalize that guy's car? I looked up from packing my desk. Jim, I'm a high school science teacher. Do you really think I'd risk my career over something so petty? He studied my face for a moment, then grinned. You know what? I don't want to know. Probably for the best. So what are your plans for the summer? I'm thinking about writing a book. Maybe something about the practical applications of chemistry in everyday life. Sounds educational. Oh, it will be. Very educational. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer, watching the sunset and reflecting on the events of the past few months. My marriage was over, my wife was gone, and her lover had fled the state to escape his creditors. Some people might call it a tragedy. I called it a successful experiment. You see, the thing about science is that it's all about understanding cause and effect. You form a hypothesis, you test it, and you observe the results. If your hypothesis is correct, you get the outcome you predicted. My hypothesis was simple. If you treat someone like they're weak and stupid, eventually they might surprise you. Marlene and Kyle had treated me like I was pathetic, passive, and powerless. They assumed I would just accept their betrayal and let them destroy my life. They were wrong. I didn't use violence. I didn't break any laws. I didn't even lie to anyone. I simply applied the principles of chemistry and human psychology to create the conditions for my enemies to destroy themselves. Kyle's greed and dishonesty had made him vulnerable to people far more dangerous than me. All I did was make sure those people knew the truth about his situation. Marlene's selfishness and cruelty had isolated her from everyone who might have helped her. When she needed support, she found herself completely alone. And me? I was free. Free from a marriage that had become a lie, free from people who had tried to use and manipulate me, and free to build a new life on my own terms. As I finished my beer and headed inside, I couldn't help but smile. It had been a very successful year for Mr. Colehart's science class. The lesson plan was simple. Actions have consequences, cause and effect, basic chemistry. And some people are much slower learners than others.